You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
I'm Stephen Cabral. Today on our Training Thursday show, I'm pretty excited about the show because I get to talk about a lot of the, rants I would like to go off on a lot of times when I see people exercising at the gym. And I know that it's not their fault specifically that they're doing these exercises. But what's happened is we've kind of just been shown maybe like 30 years ago or 40 years ago when exercising at the gym actually became a pretty big thing, that these are the exercises that you should do. These are the pieces of equipment that you should use. And then we just kind of go from there. But the problem is, even though those exercises, they weren't bad 40 years ago or so. They're certainly not safe, and I'm going to explain why today, but they were a great starting point. But the problem is, just because you start somewhere doesn't mean that you can't progress. And now that we know so much more about exercise, so much more about exercise physiology, and how to actually change our physique with different types of exercises, mainly functional movement-based exercises, it's time to progress. It's time to move on. And so I just keep seeing these exercises, and I saw them in the 1990s, we'll say, when I first started exercising, mid-90s, and I still see them today, and it really, nothing's changed. It's like a time warp every single time I go in the gym, except for, yes, there are some more advanced stages now, like people are using the TRX, and they're using kettlebells, and that certainly wasn't around, back then at your standard gym. So let's go over 5 machines and, specifically exercises that I still see being done at the gym every single day. And I want to give you better alternatives. So I don't think it's enough just for me to say, hey, don't do these exercises, but let's actually talk about how you can actually get better results and not get injured. Because all the exercises that I'm going to talk about right now, all the machines are actually, you're going to be more likely to get injured. And that's the big thing, because if you get injured while exercising, guess what? You're out of the game. And that's always the big thing. I learned this from actually one of my mentors, Mike Boyle, Coach Boyle. And he works, or actually did work in Boston. He worked with the 1982 Women's Olympic team, I believe. Hopefully that's the correct information. I'm pretty sure that's true. And I started studying him, I guess, in the mid-90s or so, or late 90s. And I would work with him at Boston University and just kind of watch him go through and coach the team. It was completely different than what you saw at the time. And he was just going through a lot of these functional-based movements and getting the body to move how it's actually supposed to. But his big thing was this, is that my job is to make sure that these elite athletes do not get injured. Because if I injure them training, or if they get injured in their sport, they're out of the game, and they're out of probably millions of dollars in their contract. So let's get right into it now. I'm going to go through 5 of these specific exercises. They're all very different because I want to give you a broad array. So you'll probably be able to think about the machine that I'm talking about and then apply it to maybe a half a dozen others. So that first machine I'm talking about right now is called the Smith machine. Now, if you haven't heard of it, call this. What it is, it's a fixed barbell that is along like this really big 5-foot, 6-foot machine. It's a big metal machine, and you can kind of twist the barbell and then rack it to like a foot above, a foot above, a foot above. It just kind of goes up and down and kind of click the barbell off and on. And what a lot of people use this machine for is, of course, bench pressing, but I'm not going to talk about that today. What I'm going to talk about is people doing squats on it. So they put the pad on the bar typically, and they put it right on their neck or their shoulders. And what they do is they squat down after they add some weights on the side. It's a big, long barbell. Again, it's fixed in place. And they like this machine because there's no spotter involved, so they can kind of just, if it gets too hard, they can just kind of click it on. But the problem is this. When you do a squat on a Smith machine, it does not set you up for normal human movement. And that means this, that typically when you go to squat and you have a barbell on your back, or just basically on your trapezius muscles, which are right underneath your neck, you are allowed to bend your upper body down about 30 degrees. Now, that's proper form. Some people, of course, go more than that. And that's called 30 degrees of flexion in the back. Now, 30 degrees of flexion with your chest still staying beyond or not going over your knees and sitting back on your heels, sitting back on your hips allows really great technique. And that really keeps that bar over your center of gravity, over your plumb line. It engages your core and engages all the muscles in your legs. But what happens is when you use that Smith machine, there's actually your body's still more up straight, almost like you're doing a front squat, but you're doing a back squat, and it puts more pressure on your kneecaps. So basically, all you need to know about this exercise is this, is that if you're doing a Smith machine squat, yes, it's nice that you don't need a spotter, but it causes more what's called shearing pain on the kneecaps, which is not good for knee pain or knee patella tendonitis. So I would absolutely get rid of that exercise. And what would I replace it with? Well, simply put 2 dumbbells on top of your shoulders or the same barbell and squat to a box or squat to a bench, and let that bench or box be your guide. If you start to fall backwards, you can't catch yourself, the bench is there just in case. If not, just touch it and squat back up. That's called a box squat. So really nice. Or a lot of other gyms just have racks, and that means you can just free squat with either dumbbells or a barbell in this case, and then if it gets too heavy, then you can rack it. So that's my suggestion, is put those dumbbells up on the shoulders or the barbell and just do normal squats. Allow your body to dictate your range of motion. All right, the next machine is called the ab and adductor machine. I honestly can't even believe they make this machine, except that people love it still so much. And the reason is that you feel it on your inner thighs and you feel it on your outer thighs. So it really, the majority of people, and again, I don't work in gyms. I haven't worked in gyms for, let's say, at least a decade. But many years ago when I worked in gyms and I was first starting out, this was always one of the most popular pieces of equipment, especially with women. And the reason is you do feel it towards the right outside of the groin, those called the adductor muscles right in the inner thigh, and you feel a little bit in the outer thigh. So it's called the ab and adductor machine, and that basically works that part of the body. The problem is this: it's so easy to overstretch and strain that part of the body, and that's why we hear so many things like athletes have these things called groin pulls. Well, it just means that they stretched a little too far when they were either sprinting in baseball or football or whatever those things are, and it created micro tears, or sometimes larger than micro tears, and that's when it takes people kind of out of the game. So just not a great exercise. It's also isolating, plus you're seated, so it's not very metabolic. My preference is to do something called Versaloop lateral walking or Versaloop squats. Now, just a few Training Thursdays ago, I actually talked about this exercise called Versaloops, and I think I've done it on a Friday review. So definitely make sure you check that one out. Versaloop walking is absolutely fantastic, and I know I have videos on it. So on YouTube, I certainly have some old videos, from years ago of Versaloop walking. It's absolutely fantastic. Nothing really will work your inner thighs and outer thighs better than that. Now, of course, you get into other, I will say, weighted exercises, but if you're looking just for a very straightforward, easy to do band exercise, that one's absolutely fantastic. Really recommend that. All right, third machine is the torso rotation machine. Again, you're seated, you're sitting down on this machine, you're holding onto this pad with both hands, you're looking forward, and you're literally cranking your whole upper body to the side, so you're just doing a torso twist with weight. So this, I don't even know who invented this, because this is completely insane, this machine. Like, nothing puts your back at more risk of injury than rotating your lower back. Your mid-back is supposed to rotate, your hips can rotate and move, but certainly not your lower back. So when you're in this fixed rotation where your hips can't move, it's so unnatural, and your likelihood of actually hurting your lower back when you load it up with weights, it must go up by 200-300% or more. It's completely insane. So please do not use the torso rotation machine if you've been using it, and certainly if you haven't started, don't start now. Now, what can you do? Well, great exercises. You can sit right down on your butt, right on your hips, on the floor. If you're able to, if you're more advanced, pick your feet off the ground, so you're in what's called a boat pose or a V pose, and take a medicine ball and actually rotate to your right side near your right hip, and then rotate over to your left side on your left hip. And that's just called medicine ball oblique rotations. Not only does it get far more muscle activation, because now you're engaging all of your core muscles, your transverse abdominis, your psoas muscles, but you get to nicely and safely move your mid-back, called the thoracic part of your spine, rather than your lower back. Amazing exercise, really great. We work everyone up to it in my weight loss and body transformation practice in Boston. Great exercise. All right, number four is called the ab crunch machine. Again, seated in machine. If you can see the how we're going here, all these seated machines are really so bad for you. You shouldn't be sitting down. Now, keep in mind, the majority of us are seated for most of the day, so why do we want to choose machines that are going to have us seated for even a longer period of time? We want to get up and move and engage more of our muscle, and especially doing things, I'll explain this later, which are called closed chain exercises. That means your feet are on the ground and your body is fully engaged when you're doing exercise. Not only is it more metabolic, but it's so much safer. So when we're looking at a machine called the ab crunch. It means you're basically seated in a machine, your hands are over your head, grabbing onto these handles, and you're crunching your head and chest down into your abs and hips. Now, you can imagine what your back might look like when you're doing that. It's going to be rounded. You're going to be exposing your spine and vertebrae. And again, your chance of herniating or bulging a disc or creating any type of a back issue are so much greater. One of the reasons is, again, your hips are in a unnatural position. At no time in life would you ever be seated and then crunching your chest down with weight. It's not a good idea. And so for the longevity of your spine, it's really, really important you don't do that. Now, I was trying to think of a good exercise to give you that's also weighted for the abs that you could get some benefit from and not have to really worry about it, because I know that you know how to do ab crunches and you know how to do, maybe you've seen me do a kettlebell Turkish get-up or something like that. Let's talk about one that's weighted. So what you can do is that you can actually put your knees on a pad about 3 feet away from a cable machine, holding onto a rope with both hands, and then kneel down on this pad. And you're going to then, with your knees down and the rope kind of above your head, holding onto it with both hands, you can then crunch your chest down towards your knees and quads. Now, what it does is it allows you to move your hips as needed. It allows you to fully engage all the muscles, not only just of your abs, but your obliques as well, and then your erector spinae and the other muscles in your back as you start to come back up. It's a lot more natural. It allows you a little bit of rotation side to side, and you're not forced in one specific plane, which is really nice as well. You can rotate, you can crunch straight down. A lot more natural. All right, and the very last one. Now, this is probably the most popular of them all. It's called a leg press machine. Now, the leg press machine is literally you're seated, and you have your back reclined as well. So it's almost like you're looking up to the ceiling, almost. It's about a 45-degree angle. You're seated in a seat, and then both feet are on this platform above you. And you put the weights on the side of the machine, and then you allow the weights to come down towards your chest with your feet against this platform, and then you push that platform away from you. Now, think of it like this. And again, a lot of bodybuilders do these exercises, and that's okay. Keep it for bodybuilding. And if you're a bodybuilder and let's say you're using anabolic steroids and you'll do a lot of recovery between sets and all of these, and you're an experienced lifter, fine. But not for the majority of the people who are looking to stay injury-free, who don't have that type of experience in the gym, but also it's unnecessary. There's so many better exercises than that. So here's the thing. This exercise is probably more unnatural than almost all of them. And the reason is, when in life would you be lying on your back and then pushing a weight against you? We used to joke around the only time that would ever happen is if your sofa got caught between a doorway and you were literally lying down on the ground with both legs trying to kick it through or push it through, because that's really the only time you would ever be in that position. It's so unnatural. And then the weight's coming down towards you, and your hips actually go into something called a posterior pelvic tilt. Now, when that happens, you then stretch out that lower back to a far greater degree than your body would ever be used to doing, but also with weight. So again, not a good exercise at all. Can't recommend it. And there's so many better ones for you than that one. So what's a better one? Very simple. Instead of putting the weights up at your shoulders like we did in the very beginning for the Smith squat, we're going to keep the weights by your sides. Now, you can either use a barbell or just 2 dumbbells or anything you want. I mean, really, sandbag, bands, kettlebells, anything. So you're going to keep the weights just by your sides. You're going to pull your shoulder back for good posture, and you're going to squat back. You're going to sit back with your hips. This is called a deadlift. Again, you can try to touch a chair, touch a bench to make sure you go low enough, to make sure you're sitting far enough back, but that's going to work the same muscles. You're going to get the quads, you're going to get the glutes, you're going to get the hamstrings, you're going to get the calves, and you're going to get the whole upper body, like the upper torso, because it has to hold all that weight. So it's great for your posture. You are going to work at least 30% more muscle. It's a far more functional exercise, like picking up a suitcase, picking up anything, picking up your grandkids, your kids, their kids, anybody's kids. So it's going to help you out so much more in life. And I've been training, I've been exercising, I've been working with people in the fitness field. It was my first passion. It's kind of like when I had nothing else in my life when I was 17 years old. I tore my Achilles tendon. I got extremely sick. I couldn't do any sports anymore. My refuge basically became the gym. It's what I got into at 17, and it was a big part of my life. And I'll tell you, it boosted my endorphins and got my mind out of a really bad place when I was that age. And so I'll always be indebted to the gym, and I love everything about it. So, even if people are doing these exercises I just talked about, as long as you're in the gym and you do something, I just highly recommend it. I just know that your chance of getting injured goes way up when you do those exercises, and I want to see you in the gym. And the other thing is people want to get results, right? You don't go to the gym just for no reason at all. You want results, whether it's health-based, and of course that means staying healthy and safe, but also body transformation-wise. And I just gave you 5 better exercises to do that can get you far more results and kind of for all different parts of the body. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. Please do feel free to let me know if you have any questions, and I'm looking forward to joining you tomorrow for another Cabral Concept.
Ever wonder what the best sauna, blue blockers, sleep trackers, wake lights, salt lamps, or other health gadgets are? Or what about the top non-toxic mattresses, sheets, soaps, bath products, toothpaste, and cookware? Or would you like to know the cleanest choices for hemp parts, meal delivery services, supplements, and much more? I personally curated, researched, and now created a resource page of all of my top picks that continues to grow each week. These are the exact products I use in my own life, with my family, in my private practice, and they're the ones I trust. To find out all of my up-to-date recommendations and all the details, simply head on over to stephencabral.com/resources.